get to the net zero fight that I know so many wish to have, and let's get into it now. Now, here's a grab bag of people and their opinions today. Chris Bowen, who, of course, is trying to have a go at the Liberal Party for having the same target as they have with net zero, says this about, the money and then the windmills.
They've spent 8 years trashing, denying and delaying, and now they want to be taken seriously because a focus group tells them to take it seriously. They're all focus group, no focus. We will be the party that recognises that the world's climate emergency is Australia's jobs opportunity, particularly for the regions, particularly for the suburbs of Australia. Climate change is the world's biggest challenge and Australia's biggest economic opportunity.
Here's Adam Bant, the Greens leader.
How many more warnings does Scott Morrison need? This is the alarm bells ringing. The United Nations, the world scientists, everyone is calling on countries like Australia to do more before it is too late.
And he, of course, walked from Melbourne to Canberra. Oh, no, sorry, he probably unicycled his way up. As for his bit, here's Angus Taylor today.
We're not going to shut our coal mines. We're not going to tell our Japanese and Korean customers to stop taking our product. We're not going to tell Australians what kind of car to drive like Labor did at the last election. We're not going to tell Australians what kind of food to eat. Australians will choose what's right for them. And as these technologies, as we've seen with solar, come down in cost over time, they will be adopted.
Now, Corey, let's settle in on where the government's line is in explaining, in selling, in politicking what they're doing. You saw the Prime Minister on the show last night. You've heard what the Ministers just had to say there. What do you think of the pitch they are trying to put on this, which is, well, 2030 hasn't changed since the last election. Yes, we have something between 30 and 50, but let's be honest, no one knows what the technology is between 30 and 50.
Yeah, Paul, I've got to say off the bat, I don't embrace this whole emissions control system and everything else, but I think it is quite a smart political move by the PM because ultimately people have to make a choice. They're either going to want a Liberal government or a Labor government. And when you see Labor and the Greens, who are in lockstep together, when they become increasingly shrill and say the government's not doing enough, I think it's just going to panic a lot of people and say, well, actually, if we're going to head down this path, and it appears everyone wants to, or all the major parties want to, we might as well do it prudently and sensibly and wait for technology. The great disappointment, of course, is that we haven't embraced nuclear, but, that debate may come in the decades ahead. There may be a whole range of different things. So, baby steps in the right directions. Australia has met all its international agreements. I don't know what Adam Bant's complaining about. Maybe it's because he's no longer relevant. I don't know about Chris Bowen. He's just having a whine because, Albo is doing better than him and his preferred leader before. Who knows? But I think the government is actually putting a bit of prudence into it and removing a bit of the emotion and rhetoric, and that could work in their favour. Notwithstanding, I disagree with it, Paul.
Oh, correct. Look, I think everyone knows how I feel when I've talked about death, taxes, net zero, right? About the inevitability. I'm not a fan of the other two, but they are where they are. Now, Bronwyn, again, I just want to talk about the politics, not because I want to deny anyone the chance to speak against the decision, but let's talk about the politics because, I can't have heard a more uniform roar from many of the people watching the show, most of the people on the Facebook page, that this is the wrong decision and they're going to move their vote somewhere else. Do you believe that will be the case in March, April, May next year?
Here's the problem with the politics. There is no appeasing the climate change beast. It is the Trojan horse, which is bringing those ideas into our country to destroy our economy. Now, here's the problem. Once the Prime Minister says that we aspire to a net zero emissions by 2050, as I've said again and again and again, it goes straight into the public service. There will be people working up the policies. And if anyone thinks there's not going to be a Labor government between now and 2050, it hopefully won't be the next election that Morrison will be returned. Because the idea that you would have Albanese as the Prime Minister with that Looney Tune lot he's got there, they're truly barking mad with what they do to the Australian economy. Absolutely. But that doesn't make it right. It means that by the time they do get there, and somewhere along the line they're going to win an election, the problem is this, that already the public service will be ready. It'll be the new version of pink bats, but they will bring that policy out of the bottom drawer. That is what they intend to do, and it will destroy this country. So by trying to appease Prince Charles and the investors who reckon they're going to take away their investment, which is the investment I'd like to see taken away is Australian superannuation funds investing in Chinese banks and in Alibaba and Tencent, bring that money back here for investment in our country.
Good call.
Then I would like to see those sorts of things highlighted. That is why you cannot say that it is a brilliant policy to try and say take the heat out of it. It will not do. It will not wash. And that's why those people in Queensland are so angry. And the country and the coalition has to hold Queensland as well as deal with the problem in Western Australia. And I've said again and again and again that the reason that Western Australian borders will remain closed are the reasons that you were talking about tonight, and that is that McGowan will do the Labor Party electioneering. The Prime Minister won't be able, or his Treasurer or his senior ministers, Hunt, to get in there and properly campaign.
Correct.
And campaigning on the ground, I can tell you now, I've done it for years and years and years, it matters. And the energy that you can put into a campaign can make a huge difference. And that's why the problem is very real and why Queensland matters just as much as it ever did and why we have gone, in my view, down the wrong path.
Now, Joe, we know the campaign. We've talked about it all.
Yep.
We know that, the polls will turn around and say 70%. And then we know the cost of transition. As a bloke who, as you've said, is a little soft touch towards the Labor Party sometimes, it is extraordinary that they're out there asking. Now, I know why they're asking the questions about has it been modelled?
Yeah.
How does it pay for, right? Because it's the smart ass, well, you beat us up with this question, but we'll ask you.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's the very questions they can't answer about their own policy. So I know that it's very sort of clever in the short term, very clever in the immediate, but they can't answer that question. And sometime when they leave that big green bubble down there, they'll have to answer that question, and they can't either.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that stuff is just a bit of tactics. It's just a bit of payback, and revenge is a dish best served cold. Look, the truth is, I've written lots of stories about modelling, about projected jobs, about projected economic growth. Some of it will come true, undoubtedly. Some of it will not. That is the nature of modelling. It's always, by its nature, imprecise. We're talking about the future, and in some cases, up to 30 years into the future. But the truth is that no one legislated for the Industrial Revolution. It just happened. This is happening. This is the way the world's economy is going. This is the way industry is going. No one is building a coal-fired power station in Australia. That's not a government decision. That's not a government decision. I'm not going to pick a fight with Angela's mum. But no, it's absolutely true. There are
millionaires who want to make money by
private businesses are simply not investing.
The little guy.
Private businesses are simply not investing in it, Bronwyn. They're simply not No one is building a coal-fired power station in Australia.
Really?
If it was going to be done, it would have to be done
in China,
by the government.
In Japan, in India, they're building them again and again and again.
Those countries are not Australia, Bronwyn. Those countries are not Australia. They are other countries. No one is doing it here.
And
they're
we
doing
are
it for different reasons.
And it's our income. If you
cannot. Yeah, no, and we will.
We meet the criteria.
We will export. We will continue to export coal, and I don't think there's a problem with that.
Absolutely.
We will continue to export coals to those other countries that are going to buy it, because if they are not going to buy it from us, they will buy it from somewhere else. That's right.
Keep our minds going. I'm
agreeing with you, Bronwyn. If you just listen, I'm agreeing with you. If you just listen, Bronwyn,
okay.
I'm agreeing with you. There is a difference between
on renewables.
Okay,
there is no technology to be.
There is a difference between the coal we use for our own coal-fired power stations and the thermal coal we export. As long as there are foreign buyers, as long as there are foreign buyers for our coal, we will continue to sell it, because guess what? They will buy it from somewhere else. If we don't, that's how capitalism works. That's how global trade works. People decide where they want to buy their things from and what they buy.
Okay, guys, please.
We can't control that, Bronwyn. I'm telling you, I have spent the last 3 months with my head buried in this.
But you've been shouting
this is the way
line.
This is the way. No, I'm shouting the Minerals Council line. Everyone's accepted. I'm shouting the BHP line. I'm shouting the Rio Tinto line. Everybody knows
What about
this.
Australia?
This is not a choice we have.
What about what? Yes, we do have a choice. We have a choice to use our own resources for our own interests. And there is.
How do you propose we do that? What are you talking? What are you actually talking about? What are you actually talking? You're saying the government should build a coal-fired power station in Australia.
But should that be paid for by the taxpayer, by superannuation funds?
Do you think that taxpayers should pay for a coal-fired power station in Australia? That the government should build a coal-fired power station in Australia? Because private industry is not. So, is that what
I want to see?
Just tell me. Just tell me.
A little bit of private free enterprise, which means the governments must do those things which the private sector cannot or will not do.
That's
and the
not
government
free
has
enterprise. That's a private. That's a government doing it.
And it has to be in Australia's interest to do it.
Okay, so
now those.
Okay, so you think the government should build? You think the government should build a coal-fired power station in Australia because private industry will not do it?
Take subsidies away from renewables and then see what happens.
Right. I thought you're a capitalist, not a socialist.
The bell has rung. The bell has rung. We can agree the same segment, but 20 minutes.
I'm the only capitalist on the panel.
Same argument.
Joe, you're a nice guy, but don't push it too far.
Corey, after seeing what you've seen with the minor party vote, do you wish that it was 3 years ago now?
Oh, Paul, I have no regrets, but I do think a minor party or the balance of power in the Senate in a prudent, I'd say right of centre, practical, realistic, down-to-earth party is something this country desperately needs. And but I thought that a few years ago. It was a spectacular failure. But, nonetheless, you do what you think is necessary, and I still think that is necessary for the good of the country.